welcome to our Healing Hearts webinar. This evening, we're here to talk a bit about self-care. And my name is Lauren Lorenzi Quigley. I am a psychologist in the Heart Institute, and I'm joined by some wonderful heart families that will introduce themselves as well.
Hi, my name is Amy Plumley. My daughter, Catherine, was born with a severe coarctation of the aorta, bicuspid aortic valve and mitral valve stenosis. We didn't know when she was delivered, so it was quite a shock to us, and we spent quite a good bit of time in children's, but they were very wonderful.
Okay. I'm Diane Matiqua, and this is
Joe Worley.
and our daughter Chloe was born in 2015. She also had coarctation. Yeah. She also had coarctation of the aorta. She had AVSD, and her heart was unbalanced given the diagnosis of hypoplastic left heart syndrome.
Yeah. I don't know what else to add to that.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful summary. So, we wanted to speak a little bit about self-care, and I think it's an important topic that we all can touch upon, but it means so much more coming from families that have traversed this hospital experience, like these families have. And, self-care, it's really an effort to take care of yourself so that you can fully show up for your child as they traverse their heart journey. And that looks different for each person. It looks different in each moment at the hospital, and even transitioning to home. It's easier said than done in some instances, but I think looking to people that have gone through this journey, that have walked through some of these steps, is really a helpful way of examining things, kind of steps that you can take to best care for yourself, so that, as I mentioned, that you can fully show up and care for your child. So I guess the first thing that I wanted to ask you guys today are, what are some of the forms of self-care that were most helpful to you as you were spending time in the hospital as your child was receiving medical care at Children's? Amy, maybe you can give us a start there.
Perfect. So we came in, overnight. And so kind of getting into a routine, we were up for over 24 hours with the newborn, not knowing what to expect. But after that first day, we kind of figured out, okay, this is when rounds are. So we were there, 7 a.m. for rounds every single day. And then we would go home. It was hard to grasp, but I remember calling the first few nights to check in with the nurses, which was good self-care for me. 1 a.m. when I'm pumping, call the nurse and you can give them the code and they can, give you a recap. But having the one-on-one care and the nurse just sits in your room and watches your child allows you to go home. And, I was still emotionally not able to cook or clean, but at least I was home and able to kind of just sit there and, recharge and unwind from being, like, oh, do I need to pay attention? What's going on? And just leave. It's okay to leave. And, as we kind of got into a routine, we knew what our trajectory was when we were having surgery. My husband and I would spend time when we'd go down. The great thing about Lawrenceville is the location. It has fantastic food scene, also some really cute shops. So we were able to take a walk. We were in there in September-ish, so the weather was nice, walk down a hill, get a little bit of exercise, eat some food, check out some stops, and then go home. We fortunately were very close to children, so we were able to go back to our house. But take some time for yourself. It's hard to grasp, but it made me feel a lot better once I started to do that.
Awesome. I think those are some awesome points. What stands out for you guys as in this kind of conversation? What points of self-care were you able to achieve at the hospital?
So I think it's really important to note that at the get-go, like when Chloe was born, the nurses said, you need to focus on yourselves. Like, we'll take care of the hard part, but you need to focus on that, because not only, when the babies are born, like, the women are also healing as well, and dealing with postpartum and also dealing with a baby in the hospital. It's very hard. And knowing that there was somebody there 24/7 allowed us to have some sort of normal life, as you can call it. But we were told by the nurses, like, consider us as very expensive babysitters. Go home at night, take some time, go exercise, go and enjoy yourselves, try and get some air. One of the things that we ended up doing is Joe would jog in the cemetery.
Yes, it's nice in there, actually.
It's very nice and it's very peaceful too. I would walk because I don't run. But we would find out different ways of doing that. And we took advantage of, even though my daughter was a newborn, we took advantage of like music therapy. There was the harpist that would come in, and just listening to her play, that was very soothing just for me, and for Joe, but was also soothing for the baby as well. So in a newborn situation, being in the CICU, it can be very stressful. So we allowed ourselves short, frequent visits, is what we tried to stick to. And then at the end of the night, it was like 6 or 7 o'clock, we would say goodbye to the nurses, and then we would call in periodically to see how things were going.
Yeah, and it's also worth noting, we didn't start off like in this position where we knew exactly what to do. It's like we had to get there. And when the 2 times that we were at Children's Hospital, one when Chloe was born, and then the second time when she went in for her second set of surgeries, the first time there is a learning curve just because we were new parents.
Yeah.
We were in this in just crazy situation that your child is going through these surgeries. So it took us some time, but we got that. And then once you get there, and once you allow yourself to start taking care of yourself and actually listening to the people that are saying it's okay to take care of yourself, you realize the benefits of it. You realize that it helps you deal with the stress of the situation and just be in a way, well, definitely be a better parent to your child who needs it. Like when we first started off, Diane was still in the hospital over at Mercy. So there's the first 3 days, and we were both very lucky. My sisters came up and they were giving us some help as well. And both my sisters just happened to be in the medical field as well. And, when you have family saying you need to take time, make sure you're taking care of yourself. And then you have doctors and nurses and everybody in the hospital telling you, it's like they're telling you that for reasons, because it's very important. It's very important to get out. The second time we went, or that we were there for Chloe's surgery, we had the learnings from the first time, but still it took us a little bit of time to get there, because Chloe was on O2 all the time, and it's hard you feel that you need to be there, but being there all the time actually can be harmful to you, and you need to be the best that you can be to make sure you can take care of your child. So we got out, and we started on a schedule. We started taking turns with Chloe. I would take a night out. Chloe would come. Oh, and she's handing us a note. And so I would go out. I would have like a little bit of time away. Diane would be with Chloe in the hospital. We would talk about rounds when the rounds came around. Following night, Diane would go out, and I would stay with Chloe. And it sounds like a small thing to do, but if you can do that, it helps you, and you feel so much better when you're going into everything. And when those really difficult times come and you are both there together, then you can handle it a lot better. And you're dealing with that situation. You're not dealing with that situation and
Fatigue.
and the fatigue and the
Mhm.
pressure and the potential depression that comes along with just like being in that situation and dealing with a child who needs it.
Yeah.
I think I hear a couple things in there that, like, leaning on the relationships that you have that are to the support of partners and of a family is a huge thing. And I hear like being intentional with your time, that it's not necessarily just time away, but it's specific time in the unique ways that recharges you. So whether that be a walk or a run or a really good meal, it can look different for each of us, but I think it's important to be intentional. We can go and take a walk and be researching the whole time something that we heard on rounds, and does that really kind of get us to where we need to be and helping us take that time away, or can we be more purposeful to really find the moments to really get away, mind and body, for a moment, not for long, for like it sounds, but for just a chance to kind of recharge a bit.
Mhm.
What about at home? So that transition from hospital to home is huge. There's so much to adjust to, especially in the new parent time point, but then also I'm sure after Chloe's second surgeries with coming home at a different age range, which can look so different than that first time. How did those self-care strategies that you utilized in the hospital carry to home, or how did ones maybe prior to your children's hospital stays carry to that first admission? Those are two kind of separate questions, but whatever you're thinking of in that room.
Yeah, I mean, we still exercise. We have a little bit more, the gym's closer by. So it's not just running through the cemetery. Now we run through, we're in New York, so we run through New York now.
Oh, wow.
Eating well. I do a lot of cooking at home. So I was doing that while we were at Ronald McDonald House as well, because the cafeteria and everything is great, but you have to eat healthy too.
Mhm.
So
Chicken fingers only go so far.
yes, yes, you get
Or
used to
late night
all
pizza.
the food. Yeah.
All the carbs.
I think we bought a crock pot. I was making chili, and it was just like, because the Ronald McDonald rooms, they don't have an oven or anything like that. So we just bought what we could, and just having like the home cook aspect of it, because they have the kitchen up there, but having the just doing something in the apartment that, I'm like, hey, I made chicken chili tonight, or hey, I made whatever I can make in a crock pot. So it just really helps.
I think for me, I was lucky to have Joe, because he's so calm. I mean, he has a calming demeanor. Talks very calmly. I will tell you what the night that we brought Chloe home for the first time. And
this is after birth, right?
Well,
After 6 months.
after
Yeah.
6 months.
Yeah.
So we went through the training of how to give all the medications. So Chloe went home with like 7 or 8 different medications, and also Lovenox shots too.
Yeah, we were staying at my parents' house, who live in south of Pittsburgh.
Yeah. So Joe went to go, it was later at night. Joe went to like Arby's or something
Wendy's.
to go, yeah, whatever.
I remember it so clearly.
And I said, all right, well, I'll give Chloe her medications. I got this. And I realized I didn't have it. Like I completely broke down, because the medications were saying like, oh, give like a half a tablespoon of the, and I'm like, I don't know what it is in English units. Tell me what it is in metric units. Like it was hard, because then I had to call the hospital and say, this needs translated to me. Like I'm crying. I'm like, I have to get all this stuff to her, and it's already late. And like I completely broke down, and I called him, and
I'm in the drive-through at this point.
He's
10
in the
minutes.
drive-through, and I'm having a complete and total breakdown, because like I didn't know how to do the math.
Well, you were also trying to hold Chloe at the same time, and I
hold
informed
Chloe
you
at the
that you could put her on the ground; she would be fine.
Yeah.
Rolling around on the ground.
Because again, we were at his parents, so we didn't have like a playpen or anything like that. So it was just like a stopping ground before we were to take her to New York. And I realized at that point, like how like how important it is to just like just like focus on the situation, take a deep breath and say, okay, let's calm down. Let's call someone, which I called him. Then I called the nurses, and said to them, like, this is, I need help. I need help. You need to help me because I don't understand what I'm doing here. I had it in the hospital. And then when I did tell the nurses, like, I didn't understand the difference between the English units and the metric. They're like, this is why everybody should be using the metric system. So it became like, now we can laugh about it, but understanding, like, I recognize right away, like, this situation can get out of hand really quickly if I don't just calm down and ask for assistance and ask for help. So that's my funny story. Joe laughs about it now. But
Oh, I have
yeah.
tons of funny stories about that. So, but it's also an interesting point is that what the thing that I find funny about that, besides all that, is by the time because Chloe was born, she was taken to Children's Hospital, and then it was like 6 months later. So our first night home as parents, because my parents weren't there at the time, they were at our family cabin. Our first experience as parents was 6 months after everybody else. So we're dealing with medicine and having a child, and we're like, where's our care?
Yeah.
Where's the team of nurses?
Where's the nurse to change this poopy diaper? That they're like, oh, we'll get that because we have to weigh it. And you're like, oh, thank goodness I don't have to change this. So now you're faced with becoming like an actual parent, and not just like a medical
That's
parent.
when it set in. That's when it set in with the way we were parents like 6 months after. So.
And that sharing of parenting duties is such a challenge. It's a challenge in the hospital, like learning those relationships and how that balance happens and what feels right to you. It looks different in the CICU. It can look different on 7A, and then it looks really different at home. So I think that's an important thing to prepare yourself for, and to be really, it sounds like you're really introspective about it. Like, okay, how can I move forward in this moment? But yeah, what stands out to you, Amy, and that kind of thing in terms of the self-care practices that you instituted at home that you found helpful, that did translate to the hospital, and then maybe translated back home again?
So we were very fortunate. We went to the children's home in between Children's Hospital and going home. We had some feeding issues. So that was kind of, honestly, I think the best step down for me, because I would have been like, I have to change a diaper? Is it my time? I don't understand. And so we were there for a little bit over a week working on feeding, but it was mostly me. It was like, the pediatrician would come around, but it was like, okay, I'm going to get you changed. I'm going to, because she was just on a pulse ox. So like much more freedom. I can hold you. Let's sit and like engage. I have to, I still had to change the diaper. I couldn't throw it away, but like I had to do that. My husband was working at the time, but he was working closely. He would come in, in the mornings, go to work for a bit. And I think for him, that was his self-care. He knew he would not do well sitting there watching her and just knowing he couldn't do anything. So he went to work. He was there if I needed him. He was there for any appointment or, specialist coming in, but like, that's what he needed. He needed to go to work. He was close, and that was fine, because all I wanted to do being in the medical profession was sit there and like look at the chart and like, what are your weights at? And, how much are we feeding you? So having that step down to the children's home was really, really helpful for me. And we got to go experience the other side, more a little bit on the outskirts of Lawrenceville, all the places to eat down there. And then when we got home, my husband was working, and I had my dad come. I was like, okay, Dad, you have to watch her. Because I had to get a couple of things out of the car. I was like, you have to keep eyes on her the whole time. So we didn't need to do that. You guys said, like the first night of really parenting, you're like, what do I do? So, it was fine. But again, like we had went for walks. I was still very fortunate that I was able to be off for another about 8 to 10 weeks after she got out of the hospital. So I was still able to enjoy, a maternity leave, even though it was kind of modified, still had a lot of appointments and everything like that. And I would have probably called the nurse line a ton of times, but I was very fortunate. I had a pediatrician friend who I would be like, is this normal? What do you think of this? And so she was just a fantastic friend and was like handled all those things, because I would be calling all the time, because my funny story is, and I think being able to look back and laugh at it is a good thing. And you guys obviously have that too, is, she was an end of August baby. I had her in a footy sleeper, get up to nurse, and I'm like, oh, your feet are cold. Let me just add socks. Like, looking back on it, like, your feet in footy sleepers in the end of August should not be cold. Like, it should click. And it clicks now. But at the time, you're sleep deprived. She wasn't eating. It's, it was just the mixture of everything. But it's like, oh, I get it now. So self-care, it is just, you have to figure out what works for you. That's what worked for my husband. He had to be at work. He had to be productive. I needed to be there. I needed to make sure, I was able to stay home. And I think that was good, and have some of these normal, like, hey, come visit my kid experiences. Let's go see everybody. Let's dress you up in the super cute clothes that you weren't able to wear for the first 6 weeks because you had, mittens and hats, and that was about it. But the step down with the children's home was also very helpful for me personally.
That can be such a wonderful transition period. And yeah, a really special place. But I think it's a good point, because that you make, that, what works for one person doesn't always work for others. And what works for you, like instituting all kinds of new things when you're in the stressful hospital environment, is probably not going to be successful. So it's important to kind of go back to the things that have worked for you in the past. It's not really the time in which to institute kind of all new practices. There's already so many new practices coming about with just being a new parent. So I think tapping into what has worked in the past is an important way to kind of look at it. Whether that's jumping into work or getting a food that sparks a little joy amidst all of the stress of being at the hospital. What makes it hard? I mean, and I can think of many things, but that to be able to take care of yourself when you were inpatient, what were some of the barriers that you found to kind of taking those steps? We've talked a little bit about them, but kind of more specifically about those barriers to self-care that exist in the hospital that stood out to you the most.
Well, I'll start. I really was step down, and I have told this to every parent I've ever talked to, is going down from, the one-on-one care to the one in the ratio changes, 1-on-2, 1-on-3. And it's like, you aren't watching my child constantly, and you don't know how to parent because you've never had a kid before if it's your first one. So you don't know what's normal. And then they had these issues. And so it was really hard for me to leave. Like, I don't think I left that room for over a week, except maybe once. Like, I was doing well when it was one-on-one. And then when the ratio changed, I couldn't leave. I just remember my husband hearing me cry in the shower because I couldn't leave. I wouldn't get coffee. Like, I would let my mom come, and I'd like run down, and like that was it. And there's this nice old, I still remember volunteer, offering to sit so I could go get food or do something. I was like, no, it's okay. So it's okay to not be okay, but that's where you have to have your supportive person, who was like my husband's like, get a hold of yourself. What do you need? You need to take care of yourself. And once he kind of shook literally and figuratively into me, it was like, okay, let's go out to dinner. So then we did go out to eat, and then kind of got back into that self-care routine. Children's is wonderful. You should have absolutely no concerns about the change in ratio, but being a first-time mom with an undiagnosed cardiac issue, and it was just like, okay, I can't handle it, but I got out of it, and we're okay.
I think for us, we had two varying experiences. So, we were inpatient for the first 6 months. We were at Children's Hospital for the first month, and then we got transferred to Children's Home during interstage, which is the time between her 2 surgeries, and then we got transferred back to Children's Hospital for her next surgery. So I think during her first 2 surgeries, for us, it was like the CICU, it was like the one-on-one care, it was like the gold care, and we had no worries, and we felt like we could leave, and there was always a set of eyes on her at all times. And then when she did get transferred to the step down unit, and it was like a different world, like the rooms are bigger, there's people in and out, you can take her out on the floor, you could take her to the atrium, and it was scary. Like, you got used to that, like that bubble almost, and knowing that there was that, but also you knew that this is the next step to going home. And you have to transition to this. And at first, like, I did the same thing. I was crying in the shower. I was like, hi, this nurse has 3 other kids she's watching, or he's not coming in time, and it's just like, and then you think about it, and it's like, you're being irrational. Like, they would not transfer her up here if she would not be able to handle it. And those nurses up on 7A, they are rock stars too. And anything that they would notice, they would be on the phone with a fellow, be like, hey, this doesn't look right. Maybe we need to transfer her back down to CICU. Alternatively, when Chloe had her final surgery when she was 2.5 years old, I had the exact opposite feeling. I couldn't wait to get back to 7A. Chloe was inpatient. Usually the Fontan was like a 2 or 3 week stay, and Chloe had some complications, so she ended up being there for 4 months. It was long, especially it was a completely different experience from when she was an infant, as opposed to being a 2.5-year-old that could vocalize that things hurt, or vocalize that she didn't like being in the CICU. She wanted to go back. She wanted to go back upstairs where she had her balloons and she had all of her things. So that became the opposite effect. It was just like, you knew that she was there in the CICU for a reason, and knowing that, it was a celebration when you got to go to step down unit, because then you were freer, you could get outside, you didn't have the delirium that sometimes happens in the ICU. And then even then, up on 7A, we were freer to do more things. And even though she still had oxygen, we were able to take laps around around 7A. Like, we found that it was sort of a culmination of parents that
It was a team effort.
It was a
definitely.
team effort where we kind of figured out how many laps it took to make a mile, because we didn't want to go, we didn't want to leave, because our kids were either sick or they weren't feeling good. So it wasn't the right time to leave, but we found ways to make it work. So we found like 15 to 20 laps around equal to mile. So here we got out, we're still walking around and we're still getting our exercise, and you're taking your child out in one of those carts or wagons, and they're enjoying it so much more. And even those little things you're thankful for, because then you're able to do something different. And you're able to also share the experience with other parents. You realize that not only is your spouse or your partner in this with you, but you also develop relationships with the other parents. And that became important to us as when Chloe got older, because we could see like the other kids, and then she was able to play with some of the other kids that were either waiting for heart transplants or they were waiting for their own surgeries. And it became like sort of like kind of a community of sorts, and you were supportive of each other. And when art therapy came around, you're all coloring there at the tables. So it was a different experience, but you find a way to make it work, and you understand that there are other parents in that situation, and then those people can be a lifeline as well.
Going back to barriers, I mean, I mean, the hospital is doing an amazing job as a barrier. Seems pretty good to me. But I really think it just goes back to that you're going to be your own barrier. You're limiting yourself, and once you let go of, I guess, the expectation that you think that people, once you let yourself have like the ability to like just enjoy like a little bit of the day just to have for yourself, and move past a lot of what you're dealing with, it helps so much. So I think that it's like you're going to be your own barrier. I don't feel that there's anything necessarily in the hospital or the staff or anybody in that hospital that will not tell you to go and take some time for yourself. So it's more just getting through that mental block that you have to be there. And there's some difficult times that happen, that you're just, you can't be there because it's like they're coming out of surgery, they're still like they're still recovering, or the anesthesia is still very heavy and it's not going to be a couple of hours. You have to let yourself be able to take that time and go do something, because you're not being productive there. You're not being beneficial to yourself or your child.
And even Joe, we were also in a situation where Joe had to go back to work. So we live in New York. So Joe went back to New York and I was in Pittsburgh. And I relied a lot on, when she had OT and PT, I knew that they were one-on-one. So I could go and grab a coffee, or you let them sort of watch over her, and also, work with her a little bit while I decompress a little bit using the volunteers. I know this was pre-pandemic, so I'm hoping the volunteers are still there.
They're coming back. Yeah.
They were amazing.
What about the greyhounds? Are they coming back? I hope the dogs are coming
back.
Dogs
are coming back, a couple.
So using the volunteers was extremely helpful, and Chloe developed a rapport with the volunteers, and she knew that there was one gentleman who was so nice, and she loved seeing him, and I knew that she would be engaged with him for at least a half an hour, that I could run out and maybe go to Target or run down the street and get some lunch or something. It's just something to be able to break up my day, because I was the sole person there, because Joe was back and forth every other week to New York.
Yeah, my company was really great during the time, so that helped a lot. They let me work in New York. They wanted me in New York once for a week, and then I would go and I would work remotely for a full week. And it was a lot of playing around with like times and like when I'm going to do things and when I'm going to design. I do experience design, so figuring out when I could do that. But my company was really great, and they worked with me, and I'm still with them today because of the way that they worked with my family at the time. So that was not necessarily, they weren't a barrier, but I can see how certain companies might throw up barriers. And that becomes a challenge as well, because then you're dealing with work, and then you're dealing with having a child in the hospital. Diane's first job was, let's say, not only up and up with a lot of things. I don't know if you want to talk about that.
Oh, we'll breach that if they.
Okay. So anyways, so it was a very difficult time, but we had different employer experiences. Diane's was not the best, and then mine, they were constantly looking for ways to support me. They sent us balloons. They sent a nice little like birthday gift for congratulations, baby Chloe, thing that's actually hanging up in her room right now. But I can see how companies can, or not companies, I can see how work can be a barrier. Amy, I think it's great that your husband was able to keep working. I think that as an outlet completely makes sense to me. But again, just based on our experience, like with Diane's work, the environment that Diane was in, like I can see how it could go bad, or they can
Also the opposite. Yeah, and I think it's also, using your tribe, right? Whether that's family or whether that's your company or but also advocating too when the supports aren't showing up in the way that works. And even the most well-intentioned friends and families can have a hard time conceptualizing what families are going through. And I think sometimes being able to speak up and say what you need, even in some, I guess, occupational situations where it's not met, is so important, but hard to do when you're in the middle of such stress.
Yeah, you have to let the pressure out, or you're just going to explode. We have one of Chloe's friends up here. She recently got her ear pierced, and they had to go to the hospital because there was something with the ear had to go wrong. Her parents were texting Diane, being like, "I don't know how you did it," because she just went in for some like local ear. She
was in for like a day,
and they're like losing their mind. We're like, All right. So,
Yeah, it's completely different experience, and they're just like, we're freaking out, we're freaking out, and I was just like, she's in the best hands. Just trust the doctor. She'll be fine. Yeah.
it'll be okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think that's where the relationships it sounds like you guys made while you were there with Chloe are huge, because it can be hard, even, you know, families that have gone through little medical experiences compared to a 6-month stay and like, and a series of multiple surgeries in the first years of life. It's really hard to connect to that. So I think, I think ways to communicate with families so they can best support you, and family and friends, they can best support you. And then also finding people that can understand it in different ways can be really helpful, whether that's like online support groups or Facebook groups or the people down the hall, or which COVID has kind of limited to some extent. But I think those are also important things to think about.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So I guess, you know, I think Dr. Johnson, we're probably on the end of our timeline here, but I hear kind of different themes in our discussions of self-care. And I think finding positive outlets for stress is so important. And like we talked about, that these look so different for different people. Maybe that's calling a good friend, or going out to dinner, or just a moment with your partner or a loved one. Whether it's a shower or a bath or sleeping in your own bed, all of those things in different kind of moments are huge and incredibly important. Finding the people that can support you, and advocating for ways that they can, whether that's bringing a meal, getting you a crock pot, cleaning your home while you're gone. Little things like that can make a big difference, and sometimes it's hard to ask for that help, but when people want to support you, kind of giving them ways that can help can be a big thing.
I found that for us, like, people didn't know what they could do to help. And like, even just doing like a meal train, simple things that people can do, makes them know like, oh, this is how I'm helping. Like, I can't be there, I can't be in the hospital, but what can I do? Or even like having a friend offer to like clean your house, or to take care of the dishes, or walking the dog, or like little things like that, just so, because like people are thinking like, oh, I have all this work I need to do at home, or how am I going to feed everybody today? Let your support system help you. It doesn't, like, there's nothing wrong with reaching out and asking for help and saying, because people want to help. If your friends and family are saying, what can I do to help? Let them.
Can decorate your rooms.
Yes, I think that's a big thing. Finding ways to empower yourself as parents when some of the parenting duties look so different than in different circumstances, whether that's decorating your rooms, or getting really cute hats and mittens, or bringing the blankets from home, or reading the books that you have been so excited to share with your baby. Like, I think those things can be self-care for sure.
We brought in cute outfits for Chloe, and we let the nurses pick out the outfit for the day, which they absolutely loved doing. So that was their own self-care.
Yeah.
So, because like with all the wires and everything like that, it was easier for them to dress the baby. And then when we came in the next day, the baby was dressed, and they're like, look, we found this little outfit. It was so cute. And we put it on. So, and you also develop an amazing rapport with the staff there, the nurses, the assistants, even the people that clean the room. They are amazing. Everyone there is there to help you. And you start knowing who people are and their schedules, like who's there on the weekends or who's here on Wednesdays. So they also become an important part of your support system as well.
And some other things I just heard you guys say, we're taking like advantage of the resources that are available, whether that's people or educational opportunities or like a webinar like this, or just finding, finding the things that are around, like Healing Hearts, and and utilizing them. When we're so stressed, sometimes it could be hard to take the time to tap into that type of thing, but sometimes we're not always aware of how it can help and how it can support us. So I think being open to that and accepting that help is important.
Mhm.
Are there any kind of other domains that stand out to you guys, or any final thoughts that you'd want to share?
The only thing I would touch on is I was very fortunate. I was able to pump. So that was one of the things that I got a lot of support on, because, it's 6 days when we go in, I haven't pumped yet. I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. So, they hook you up with all the pump supplies, a pump, they give you food vouchers, they give you a private room. And that was something that was probably also self-care for me. Is like, I can do this for you. So if
Yeah.
I'm here, I'm going to pump every 2 hours. And so don't hesitate if you are going to try to pump. There's a lot of resources in the hospital. Like I remember them bringing some of the nurses in who were, more familiar with all the lactation stuff. And, they stored a bunch of breast milk for me. And I think that's one really important thing, that if you can do that, if you're able to, if it will come in handy down the line, please do so. And don't hesitate to use that resource, because you think you can't make that bond that should be natural and should come, but there's still other ways around it. And we ended up being able to nurse for like 18 months after that. So it was a rough go, but it definitely, having the resources in the hospital made it a lot easier.
Yeah, those parenting things that are important to you, even when they have to look different in the hospital, there are so many people that want to support how they can happen, even if it looks a little bit different, even at first. So I think that's huge. And that's 18 months. That's really pretty cool.
I was ready to be done. I was like, okay, bye.
But we are so appreciative of the insight and the amazing things that you guys have to share, and the strength that you showed as you traverse these experiences with your kids. And I think this information is amazing, and I'm so privileged to have been able to speak with you guys tonight. So thank you for sharing, really.
Of course, always happy to help.
Yeah, same.
Yes, we're here to help. So this is amazing. Congratulations to Dr. Johnson for even coming up with this, because Chloe was born in 2015, and something like this didn't exist. It may have been like, there may have been like little things here and there, but this is an amazing program, and we're so happy that Children's Hospital has really put the effort into creating such a program and take advantage of all of it. All of the therapies, art therapy, music therapy, patient advocates, the breast pumping, ask your social workers, child life, everyone. We've been through, because we live in New York, we also have seen how other hospitals have done things, and Children's Hospital has blown us away with everything that they have done. And
We got spoiled.
we have been so spoiled.
Yeah, we know it now, and we're sorry.
We're sorry. No,
Take us back.
no,
I'm
no,
kidding.
we never left. We never left. And this is one of the reasons why we do travel. Like, we do have our local hospital, and we do outreach with the local hospitals. But when push comes to shove, we come back to Pittsburgh because of the support that we have here, not just with families, but the hospital itself. It's such an amazing hospital, and you guys deserve all the accolades.
I agree.
He usually does.
Thank you guys so very much.
Thank
I
you.